After 90 hours of research looking at 20 headlines, 30 studies and 20 other related studies, here is wine good for your health? Welcome to Wine Jam with me, Some Cash, where we talk about all things that are related to wine, whether it's talking to tennis fans and asking them if they love wine more than tennis, or what's happening in your local wine merchants. But on this channel, what I also do is wine news, and that is predominantly taken up by the subject of, is wine good for your health? It comes up so often that I have to omit it from wine news whenever I am doing it, because there's just so many times that it comes up in an article. For me, I know it's obviously a case that I'm a big wine fan and that might be biased, but the truth is that most of the time I get asked this question by customers and I actually clearly don't have a convincing answer to give them. It's usually one which is kind of vague, generalized and sort of here and there. So to tell you the truth, I really want to know the answer, the honest answer, for myself and for other people. So let's get stuck in. First, though, we have to discount all white and rosés, as there's hardly any resulting studies that show either any benefit to wine and that are any way significant. So it is all up to red wine in this matter. In saying that, we always see the news headlines with claims of red wine having health benefits. So let's start with this point. Headlines. They're there to grab your attention, for you to click on the article or to pick up that newspaper. And when you click on that article, you're giving a response that the subject interests you and that this headline works in drawing you into the subject, which means that the news organisation should make more headlines like these. There's also the factor of advertisements, which know how many people have been looking at this subject, so therefore the exposure to the advertisement. So when they are creating a headline, they are going to use the most shocking or eye-catching parts of a subject to get you to read the article. That's not to say that they're incorrect, it's just that they've been very creative with the whole truth. So here are some examples of the headlines, and as you can see, they grab your attention or they're quite exciting and they kind of give this bolstering effect to what maybe the article is about. But looking at after 20 articles, 90% of the time, there is a study that the newspaper report on their findings. The newspaper will have quotes from the research scientists which explain its good benefits. Then the newspaper will take parts of the study they will want to focus on and lean towards the benefits that the study shows, as they have shown in their headlines. Then the doctor's opinion will be disregarding the study as it's not suitable for a healthy lifestyle in conjunction with the government's drinking guidelines, with then maybe an academic saying that it's all a bit academical, because how can you judge the wine is really that bad for you compared to everything else in your life? But that doesn't give you carte blanche to drink as much wine as you want. So the issue with this is that, you know, these newspapers or articles, when you kind of thinking, so I guess there's something good about wine in a way, and so it's never that kind of black and white, as I was saying, about exactly what the answer is. You see, the main focus here in the articles is the words that are stated, a study has shown. And for whatever reason, me included, we tend to believe that when scientists or researchers are doing a study, that they are wholly honest about their process, and that is done in the broadest and most conclusive test that you could possibly imagine. The truth is that mostly is not true, especially with the studies in red wine that I have researched into. And well, this is why. Most studies are preclinical, meaning not done on humans, but on rats who have been used as a similar pattern to humans, so they have sound reason for using rats, but in the end, they're not humans. The second point is the amount of people in these studies. I've come across some of these studies and it's got 10, 14, 20 people in them. So that's not a broad enough amount of people or a large enough amount of people for a study to really make it generalized to the public. The second point is the age range of people in some of these studies. Sometimes they start at 50 years and above, or they start at just around 20 years to around 30 years of age. That's not really helpful to either or. I mean, The issue would be is that above 50, your body's very different compared to when you're 20. And again, even with your lifestyle when you're 50 compared to your lifestyle when you're 20, what you're eating when you're in your 20s and your 50s, I would say kind of changes a lot. The other point is when you do have maybe the large amounts of people and you do have a large age range of people, if that happens, then it usually happens in one particular country. So that's great for that country, but it doesn't really mean it kind of applies to everyone. So in the sense of saying the way that some of these studies that have been the case in Spain, that's fine. That works really well for them in Spain, but they have a very different culture. They have a very different lifestyle, climate and diet over there compared to, well, let's say British sort of climate, diet, lifestyle and drinking habits. If I was to take a very kind of, simple version would be that we go to the pub, we have a drink, and that seems fine. But in Spain, it was predominantly seen that you would drink with something you'd eat, and it's odd to not have something to eat while you drink. So that kind of then represents obviously another kind of hole in studies in that sense. Then I saw variances between when they did have large groups and it was varied numbers of ages in that group, that there was an issue between kind of men and women. And that is because biologically there is a difference between men and women's bodies. Men tend to have, for one instance, is obviously more water retention than women. So therefore they're able to deal with alcohol better than women are. Then there was a case of women predominantly drinking wine as their main source of drink and alcohol, whereas for men it was a mixture of alcohol. And I remember in even one study it was a case of, well, women drink more wine than men, but also men drink the same amount as women. So my understanding from that, it would be in simple terms, is men were drinking like 4 pints of beer and 2 glasses of wine, while the women were just drinking 2 glasses of wine. But ultimately that makes it again a bit of an issue, because it means that whatever results you really find out about wine only and predominantly subjects itself just to women, not more to men in circumstances. So just to recap, it's very rare to get studies that are clinical studies, large amounts of people, large age range from more than one country, used sexes indifferentially on final results, and a retest of the results years later. Those are big gaping holes in these studies, because it then doesn't give you a fair reflection on what they found out, and it then doesn't make it convincing or solid fact to be really used. And those are the problem when newspapers are, or even articles are, using these studies to state these particular benefits, but they haven't stated how there may be very little people that have taken part of the study, how it's only done in one country, how they haven't done a retest. And these are major points in a study. If we were to supposedly look past those things, then we would look at what those studies predominantly focus on, and that would be varisterol. Now, varisterol is a compound that is found in wine, but although it's also well documented, as a lot of studies seem to keep talking about the benefits of red wine due to the resveratrol, it does not mean it's well investigated. You see, wine itself is made up of 85% water, 13% ethanol, 1% glycerol and porosaccharides or other trace elements, 0.5% of different types of acid, and then 0.5% of volatile compounds in general across wines. But in that 0.5% of volatile compounds, that's where you will find polyphenols. And within polyphenols, that's where you'll find varisterol. But the issue with here is that even though it's 0.5% of the wine, so it's not a huge amount of the wine that we're talking about, let's also look at how much varisterol is actually found in that 0.5%, and it's usually right at the bottom. There's gallic acid up there, there's also compounds that do with smell, but varisterol is the lowest. what was found in one particular research with Pinot Noir and Burgundy was that resveratrol came to about 4.2 milligrams in a bottle on average. And by the way, this varies massively from wine to wine. You see, in another paper which was looking at resveratrol, they stated that to get 1 gram of resveratrol, you would have to drink around 505 litres to maybe 2,762 litres of red wine just to get 1 gram of resveratrol. And those numbers and their variation from 505 to 2,700 shows you how much variance there is of how much resveratrol you may or may not get in a bottle of wine. You see here I've got a 10 milligram of an antihistamine which I usually use for my hay fever, and this 10 milligrams is really helpful for 12 hours a day. It keeps my body in check, and I'm not getting drowsy or runny nose or any of the sort because of this 10 milligrams. So 4.2, yeah, sure, it could have an effect on me, but obviously we're not going to drink the whole bottle of wine to get that 4.2 in one go, and obviously that therefore completely makes it none and void about it being a healthy way of drinking at all. So let's take it on a much more plausible level, which is pouring around 150 ml of wine in a glass, which would make it about 0.84 milligrams of resveratrol. But I'm also going to put the point of we're probably not going to just have just one glass, we probably may have two. So 2 glasses, 300 ml, that gives you 1.6 milligrams of resveratrol. In grams wise, that's 0.00168. And by the way, that's 300 ml with 13% on average the alcohol that you'd get in a glass of wine. So already there, the amount of alcohol that you'd have to have just to get 1.6 milligrams, kind of in my opinion, and obviously not in the study, but my opinion, outweighs the benefit of having the resveratrol. Now, obviously that's just my feeling, but predominantly I kind of felt, well, maybe resveratrol and its smallest compound might be really that effective. But I also have to think about the fact that my antihistamine, yeah, it works for 12 hours for maybe a day, but that's in maybe when it's moderately hay fever around. If it's heavy, I have to take twice. And the other issue is that then maybe tomorrow I have to take another 10 milligrams if I'm getting it again. And it doesn't stick around. It's not got any permanency. So that's where I kind of find it's falling short. But I thought maybe resveratrol has more benefits than I'm kind of thinking about. So I looked more into it, and what I found was a researcher at Harvard Medical School, Mr. Sinclair, was a co-owner of a lab called Serotis, which was looking into serotonins to fight diseases of aging. He had written in an article stating that resveratrol and other compounds can activate serotonins. And he had done a study promoting resveratrol and its benefits, but while also releasing a book. So I guess there's no conflict of interest, right? I mean, yeah, all I can say is maybe he was very passionate and that's why, but I mean, that's the issue. It sounds like maybe he was trying to push his book as well. So later on, actually, GlaxoSmithKline bought out the labs he co-owned at a cost of $720 million. That's a huge amount of money, and that was in 2008. So I thought to myself, well, maybe they have found something of concrete evidence that's why they've spent so much money on these labs. So I went to look up the company and to see what they're doing at the moment. But in 2013, it was shut down, which was surprising because that's 5 years later only. The simple part of all of this was that they simply didn't have any concrete evidence to show that it was working to any of the availability or the benefits it was supposedly supposed to have. And looking at other reports as well, even from the Boston Globe, when they were talking about Serotis, they were saying even that as a compound was only as clear as mud as far as what kind of impact it was having. So yeah, basically for what it seems to be and the actual company itself, they moved it all the way back into their R&D. Even the site got moved. They basically shut it down. And Pfizer, funny enough, did another study on it, and they found no real evidence to show that it actually made any significance to any of their results. So for me, that's pretty much the nail in the coffin on resveratrol. It's just not enough there to really make a difference of any permanency on the human body. So for that being shut, let's think about just the red wine itself. I mean, when you're drinking red wine, we have got guidelines, which are in England 6 glasses of wine at 175 ml, and it should be 13% alcohol. So the issue there is you have to count how many glasses of wine you've had in the week. You have to measure out the amount of wine that you've drunk, and it has to be of 13%. So if it's higher than 13%, then you have to have less wine, or of that wine, I suppose. Yay. I don't know how that makes it so much more enjoyable. It takes 1 hour for the liver to break down 125 ml of wine. So in that response, there is also the case of you'd probably have to leave some time between the first glass and then the second glass. Then there's the case of acid erosion that you'd get from wine, which is higher in white wine than it is in red. But that being the case, the only way of making it healthy for you is that when you're drinking wine, you should be having some water as well in between doing that. Then there's also the case of when there was sort of a nice little highlight to wine. In August 2019, they looked at red wine and on a microbial organism level. So it's just in your inline of your stomach. And they looked at other food groups as well in this area. But with wine, they said, yeah, actually wine has got benefits in that area. But this is the catch, which they didn't say in the newspapers, which was actually the study shows that you just need to have 1 glass of wine over 2 weeks, and that's good enough, because they found 2 weeks later that at a microbiome level, it was still in the stomach. So technically, to have the benefit in that way, you just needed to have 1 glass of wine a week, and that's actually all you need. But then it now sounds like a prescription and not really kind of an enjoyable way of drinking. Yeah, I mean, it goes on as well, because the other studies that I was looking at was then when you are drinking wine, you have to think about alcohol intoxication to the bloodstream. And if you fasted for a certain amount of time and then you drink, that's not good for you. You have to drink wine when you're eating something or just after you've eaten. That's actually a better time to drink alcohol and to make it healthy for you. This is a big problem because it seems like you're having to jump through all these hoops in order for yourself to drink wine in a healthy dosage, and it's just doesn't seem like very possible to kind of keep that up in your lifestyle. Like the amount of things that you have to remember just so you're in the lines of being healthy, for me, just doesn't seem very possible at all. And I think you may have gathered that by this point that my answer to the question is wine healthy for you? Answer is no. It's not on the health respects, because from the studies which are not done have got huge holes in them, to resveratrol, which hasn't shown any promise at all in really being anything significant, to when you are having it and there may be some advantage, it's literally 1 glass in a week. That's all you need. Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about serious amounts. You know, the guidelines of what they say for drinking, which is 6 glasses of wine, in my opinion, as much as that sounds quite strict and maybe, you know, a bit too harsh, is actually spot on for being healthy. But the truth is that people aren't going to be drinking like that. And on the other factor of, wine and alcohol, 2.3 million people die from alcohol related illnesses, and wine has a part to play in that. But as much as saying that, it's also a case of that also includes, homemade alcohol as well. So there's a variance degree in that. I think the overall feeling for me is that it's a case of your lifestyle. And that's really where the balance is. It's not just with wine, it's your lifestyle balance in total. And what I mean by that is it's almost a case of thinking, if you've got a wine drinker and you've got a beer drinker, you may think of them as two different styles or lifestyles that they may have, to generalize. But that's kind of where it is, because with people who drink wine, they care more. I like to think they care more about what they're drinking, what they're eating, and what their lifestyle is, than say a beer drinker. Now I know I'm rationalizing it quite abruptly in that way, but for me it kind of seems more true. But on the level of whether it's healthy for you or not, I'm afraid that's a hard no. But I'll still keep having a glass of wine, because the truth is I enjoy it for what it is, and that is expression of where it comes from, who's made it, the flavours, the textures. That's why you drink wine. And I hope that sums up and makes it a very clear explanation of how I've come to my solution, or my conclusion I should say. I'm going to tell you what, I'm probably going to need a small glass of wine after this. Guys, stick around. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.